Eskom says it's making it cheaper for residential and business customers with solar PV or other small-scale embedded generation systems to meet what they say is a legal requirement to register them with the relevant electricity service provider. So apart from paying for the installation itself and getting a certificate of compliance from a registered electrician, what are the costs to register?
On the utility side, fortunately, Eskom is running a concessionary campaign for consumers, and we've waived all charges relating to the registration and regularization of that installation, which normally includes the cost to supply a smart meter and install it, the administrative costs of the tariff migration, the connection fees, the quotation fees, etc. All of that have been waived until the end of March.
Eskom says that at the heart of its campaign is to ensure the safety of the national grid network and ultimately those exposed to it.
I suppose what is catching the face of the consumer is the more outward campaigning we are doing for safe registration, and there are two reasons for that. The one is that we want consumers to take advantage of the cost concession we are providing, number one. Secondly, with the proliferation of embedded generators on the grid, the risk to the grid has increased. So we've got local generators scattered across the grid, and this can create a very unsafe condition on the low voltage network, and that can lead to equipment failure, to people being hurt, the public and Eskom staff.
Chris Yellen, speaking in his capacity as an advisor to civil action group OUTA, says there could be up to 80,000 unregistered electricity customers who have access to alternative energy. He argues that it makes sense that Eskom would want to get them registered, given that their use of alternative energy is now denting the utilities' revenue streams, and says OUTA has registered its objection to Eskom's demand, questioning the reasonableness and even the legality of it, suggesting that the safety issue is nothing more than a smokescreen.
This is not a question of safety, because Eskom is not the safety regulator behind the meter on the customer's premises. That is the role of the Department of Labour through the Occupational Health and Safety Act and the Electrical Installation Regulations of the Occupational Health and Safety Act, which do require that you have a safe installation behind the meter. And as proof of compliance, they have a process called a certificate of compliance by an authorized registered person with the Department of Labour who issues a certificate of compliance. So one thing is certain, you do need a certificate of compliance for your electrical system in your house, behind the meter, including the solar PV and battery energy storage system.
Yelland also says that Eskom, citing Schedule 2 of the Electricity Regulation Act in its bid to enforce systems registration, is problematic.
I want to point out categorically that in the scope of the Electricity Regulation Act, residential households are specifically excluded from the Act, and therefore from the scope of the Act, and therefore any suggestion by Eskom that what it is doing is in compliance with the Electricity Regulation Act is simply not correct, because the Act does not cover residential installations.
Pillay says the inference made that Eskom is on this campaign for revenue reasons is off the mark, although he says for those with access to alternative energy systems who also still rely on the national grid from time to time, it's only fair that they pay their fair share towards the infrastructure they benefit from, because it's costly for Eskom to maintain it.
Traditionally, we recovered those costs through volumetric tariffs. So you would recognize, so if your neighbor is there and they don't have an embedded generator and they use energy from the grid, they pay their fair share towards all of these embedded costs. So the question at hand is that for those that have an embedded generation facility, do they get a free ride from those that don't have? And that would not be fair. So we need to ensure that there is an equitable distribution of costs across. So what that means is that when you do have an embedded generation, you will need to contribute a small payment towards ensuring that the installation point is safe for you, and those are the grid connection charges, etc.
Yellen says that OUTA is currently in discussions with Eskom on its push to register alternative energy systems, and says while it's up to individual customers to decide whether they go ahead and register their systems in line with Eskom's request, he suggests that to do so may be premature as the matter remains in dispute territory. Perhaps the ultimate resolution of the current impasse will be for Eskom's request to be tested in a court of law. Nompumelelo Siziba, SABC News, Johannesburg.